Those of you who have taken a class of any kind, which I'm sure is all of you, understand the need for the test at the end to pass with a good grade. And so the focus can often be on what am I going to be tested on? And to focus on those elements of whatever the lectures are about. Those of you who have taught a class, however, might be able to understand the frustration that a teacher might feel when a student in the middle of a lecture would raise his hand and say, will this be on the test? What that means is a few different things. At the very least, it means, do I have to learn this? By extension, it would also mean, do I have to be paying attention to you right now? And if you were to answer, no, it's not going to be on the test, then the default reaction would be, okay, then I won't listen. What belies this attitude, what's underneath it is, what can I get away with? What is the bare minimum that I need to do in order to pass the test? It's not very difficult to develop an attitude like that towards God as well. And as a parish priest, I think most parish priests can understand this, but also as a Catholic myself, I also can fall into the temptation sometimes of asking sort of, what is it that I absolutely have to do? What is the bare minimum? And that attitude is betrayed very often when I hear people asking, if I were to do this, would it be a sin? Okay, that could be sort of an innocuous question, but even more if somebody says, okay, all right, it's a sin, but is it a mortal sin? How bad would I fail the test? Could I squeak by with a C- if I were to commit this sin? Now again, it's never that explicit, but I think those kinds of questions that we ask ourselves can betray a sort of lazy attitude towards the spiritual life that we have in our heart. A desire to do just the bare minimum, just so that we can make it in. And that's not how Christ thinks about it. For sure there are sins, and for sure there's failure. For sure there is hell. But avoiding hell shouldn't be our goal. Our goal should be beatitude, should be heaven. Our goal in this world shouldn't be, am I right now in a state of grace in the sense of, am I not in mortal sin right now? That's sort of a C-. Our goal here and now should be virtue, should be to act in a noble, beautiful, good way, so that our hearts transform into something that is noble and beautiful and good by the grace of God. That should be our goal here and now, not just to not sin. Not sinning really is just kind of an F+. And so, in the gospel today, Jesus contrasts the Old Testament with the New. And it's not at all that he contradicts it. It's not like Jesus says, all right, you have heard that it was said, you shall not kill. And it's not like he says, I say it doesn't really matter what you do as long as you have a good heart. No, we're still not allowed to kill. In fact, the rules are much more strict for us. In fact, if we want to see this in a sort of grading term, we're held to a much higher standard. I say whoever's even angry with his brother, whoever says to his brother, raka, which in Aramaic is related to the word for spittle. So it's sort of like I spit on you. It's a very rough word to say to a brother. Whoever says, you fool, shall be in danger of hellfire. It's not enough to just not kill. You don't deserve a reward for not killing someone. Unless you exceed the scribes and the Pharisees. So Christ turns the entire direction of our understanding of the spiritual life. It's not about avoiding things alone. It's not about looking downward and say, I'm at least not doing that. It's about looking up. I need to exceed the righteousness that's there in the scribes and the Pharisees. I need to be better. Not just than others, as if I can judge their hearts. I need to be better than myself right now. The goal is not simply to hold back when I would want to harm somebody. The goal is to transform my heart so that I can love them. And love is such an abused word. It's not this generic or easy thing. It's all in the details. It's not just not killing. Anger needs to be put in check. The emotion needs to be cleansed. Our words, we say fool, raqa, need to be controlled. The heart itself needs to change, needs to be transformed. And that's why Jesus ends this lesson with the altar of God. This is not just about you and I. This is not just about squeaking into heaven or barely making it out of hell. This is about God. And look what he says about the altar. If you're offering your gift at the altar, and there you remember, this is how radical Christ is. There you remember that your brother has something against you. Not you have something against your brother. It's not that you've got anger. Your brother is angry at you. Leave your gift at the altar and go and be reconciled. Go figure it out. That kind of internal transformation that Christ is requiring is enormous, and without the grace of God, it would be objectively impossible. But we have the grace of God. It is offered to us here at the altar. And so we can see the pedagogy of God. We can see the fatherly care that God has given us through the ages. And on Father's Day, I think it's worth reflecting how God, as Father, teaches in the Old Testament what they were able to handle at the time. All right, let's start with not killing. You got that? More or less? All right, let's go to the next lesson. And Christ comes and goes from our external actions, which is where our spiritual life has to begin, go from there to our words, and from there to the very emotions of our hearts that need to be purified by God's grace through our actions, through our words. And the kind of self-control, the kind of virtue, to use a really great word, the kind of virtue that Christ is expecting from us is great. Because again, if your teacher were to say, you did pretty well on the exam for you, that's not a really complimentary thing to say. But if the teacher were to say, I think you can do a lot better, that's what Christ is saying to us. And that's what God in his fatherly care and his providence is saying to us. You can do better than that. You can do better than just not sinning. Don't pat yourself on the back for that. And fathers, understand not only the virtue that you need to teach your children, but the virtue that you need yourself to hold back the anger and sometimes, when the temptation is there, to control all these other temptations that all of us have every day of our lives. Pray for one another. And parents, I'll tell you, I don't know any priest that doesn't understand that being a parent is the hardest job in the world. So you are very much in our prayers, but very much pray for us priests on Father's Day. We have a tough job as well sometimes. And so together, and especially with the grace of God, we surround the altar of God to receive his grace so that every day we can return to our lives and every day strive for that virtue and the life of grace that Christ expects from us.